In this video, I would like to show you a few simple tricks or approaches so you can get your Fusion design predictably into any other CAD application, or for example also Blender for rendering. The first thing I would like to point out is actually take a look at the axis system. You see Y is up, Z and X are horizontally. If we go into Blender, you see Z is up, Y and X is horizontally. So this is actually flipped. If I create a new design, let's turn on the origin. You see actually here Z is up, here Y is up. So Fusion has an option when you go to the preferences under general, default modeling orientation, Z up. So there you can set whenever you create a new document what should be used. Unfortunately, with a previously created model, changing the preference seems not to really have an impact on the file we created. So in this case here, I'm stuck. I will have to rotate my part in Blender because the horizontally Z later will be vertically Z. So this whole part will be rotated 90 degrees. So, but for yourself, for future reference, simply have Z up, and then whenever you create a new design, you're good. That was the first step. Second step, let's take a look at dimension. Currently you see my model is built in millimeters. And let's create on this plane a cube. So it's 2.5 centimeters XY and 5 along the Z. Then let's export this one, save as STL. And for example, I call this one millimeters. Okay. Then let's go into Blender. And I'm going to work in metric. I'm going to File, Import, STL, Desktop. Here's my object, import. And there's the part. You also see now this is actually rotated correctly. Z is up. And this one is 25 by 25 by 5 meters. So now if I type in S for scale, .001, now I have exactly the size I need, but I applied a scale factor. And actually I don't really want that. So let's delete it. Now Blender works in meters. That's the base unit. We bring basically a millimeter object in, which means that's the reason why it interprets the millimeter numbers just as meters. So easy fix. We simply change the design to meters. Go to Save As. Let's call this one meters. Okay, let's go to Blender. File, Import, STL, meters, zip. There you see. Scale factor of 1, and everything is set to the correct dimension. The nice thing about Fusion is simply when you work, you can change this anyway. You see also when I, for example, move this one up, let's say by 0.1 millimeter, I could also say by 1 inch. So Fusion here is actually pretty smart. Similar like Blender, you can just punch in any unit you want and the value, and it interprets it correctly. And you can always comfortably switch between the unit systems here when you're working. And I think most of this, for example, is really important for the grid. In case I'm not mistaken, let's take a look. No, the grid is anyway subdivided based on your view. So it doesn't really matter. It's properly for you, just that it helps you. Okay, so this was actually part 3, addressing the scale when importing and exporting. Let's delete this one. And part 3 is basically now my object is pretty far away. You see, this is actually my redesigned or finished handle. I needed to change my construction history, so I have half and half as a shell, and I'm going to create a group. For example, here you see all those different parts I just added. I need to rebuild my design. And now in Blender, I would like this one to show up at the world center. Well, that means in Fusion, I should have built it at the world center and not so far away. I don't know how that happened. Maybe I overlooked it. But that's not a big problem. You see at the end of the timeline, I'm going to select all my objects, go to move, and simply zip, move it over. No, maybe leave it there. Should be good. Let's take a look at the top. Yeah. So you see, I strictly only moved it along one axis. So because I'm splitting my part along the an origin, I only can move it along basically, or I'm sliding it along the plane I'm cutting. If I move this one, or I don't know what would happen. Nope, never mind what I said. It doesn't matter because we cut it up here, and then the end result we're moving. Okay, but still, you anyway want to have it nicely centered in your scene. So then you can click OK. And then to export, you can. There's an interesting artifact with the interface. If you click and see this one is selected, and then right mouse button. Oh, no, there's Save STL. Oh, great. Of course, now it works. Sometimes I notice that just move your mouse over something and then right click, then actually the Save STL pops up. But now to export it, Save STL, you can, for example, select medium. That will be okay. If you, for example, at one small part really zoom in with your camera, then maybe you want to have high. And basically what this means, refinement. Here, let me turn this one on and zoom in a little bit. There you see the polygon mesh the software is creating for us. This one is going to be way too choppy, of course. And medium seems to be good for the moment what we're doing. Then click on OK. And for example, I call this one shell 1. Then I go to the other part. Save STL, medium as well, shell 2. And I'm going to export my blades. Okay. Now let's go into Blender. I'm going to delete this one. I zoom out a little bit. And then I go to File, Import STL, Shell 1. And I forgot to set the metric. Okay, let me quickly redo this one. This one should be blade, save, replace. Shell 2. And shell 1. Okay, let's go back, delete this one. File, import STL, and let's take a look. Blade. Let's zoom in. There's my blade. Let's go to side view. Okay. File, import STL, shell, and file, import the other shell. What happened here? Everything was set to meters. Okay. Because my blade got in correctly. Let's do this one more time. Let's say shell 2. It's kind of bizarre. Okay. Import. Import. Maybe I didn't override it by accident. Oh, there it is. Okay, so make this one visible. Save as medium shell 1. Save. Replace. I don't know if maybe by accident I click actually on cancel because it was highlighted. Okay, there we are. And you see all these parts actually nicely snap into place. They're all where they should be. So there we are. So that's, for example, how you can get everything from Fusion into Blender, and then you do not have to do any rotate function, which is really very, very helpful. Now I would like to point something out. You see, when I click an object and pay attention to where my 3D widget is, you see all these STL files actually have their origin, like from alias, the object center at the world 0000. And it's basically this point here, how they're created. So I would like to rotate everything. So I can press A to deselect everything, press A. And let's say I would like maybe this one to rotate R. I could maybe go into like a side view, R, X, and then type in 90. If you have all these objects selected and you type in 0 here, only one object will be rotated. And that's because whatever you see here for translation only applies to the brightly highlighted object. So if you want to rotate all at the same time, A, select all those, R, and then X or Z based on what axis you want, and then either eyeball it, or for example, type in the value you need. So let's say maybe I would like this blade to kind of like sit on the ground. So I could, for example, move this one up there, and then I right mouse button click to here, so that I set my 3D cursor, then I set my pivot point to use the 3D cursor, and then I can rotate everything around that point. So you see, this way I can easily position those. The nice thing is, at one point, if for example you always want to reset everything, let's say the rotations, you could select the shell and type in 0, 0, 0, and for X 0, select this one 0, 0, 0, and also whoops, for X 0. And you see, this way you're just overriding everything back to the way how the file came into Blender. Let's say I would like to rotate all those shells X and Y. So I go up maybe to this view. So R, Y, 90, okay. And this one R, Y, 90, but negative. So I type in minus on the numpad. And then, for example, I can move them around there. R, Y, 90. For example, now you see, now you could make a rendering and show, or an exploded view. So there are really many interesting ways how you could do this. Or for example, we select everything, RX 90, okay. And then here, for example, maybe I rotate this one a little bit open, and then in G, grab it, move it to there. So maybe I make a rendering where I can look into the part. Okay, so that's then, for example, how you can reposition your parts, move them around, rotate them. And the nice thing is, whenever you do not like something, simply select the object and just override it. Now, let's say you have actually many objects and you don't want to do this one by one. You can also do the following. I can copy the information of this one to those two. So for example, those are also scale and rotate crazy and move to somewhere there. So click, shift click. You see every time I shift click another one, that piece is highlighted, and that's called the active object or the target object. And if I click with shift, this one, see this one is highlighted. And now all the information you see here relates to the object I last selected there. And then I simply could go to here, location, right mouse button, and copy. Zip. You see now I copied all those locations. Copy the rotation, zip, and copy the scale factor, zip. So you see it copies XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. That's also a really simple way to reset everything. Okay, so that was everything for how to set up your Fusion file, how to export everything, how to bring it into Blender, make sure everything is to scale, and then of course, yeah, move around and position your objects.